president and his postmaster general have been so obvious in their efforts to disrupt mail voting in 2020 that they're giving Democratic lawyers an advantage. By Ken Stern, August 25, 2020. The Trump administration may be reviled by Democrats, but it continues to be a reliable ally to Democratic lawyers seeking to expand mail-in voting rights. Over the past 4 months, a small group of party lawyers has filed lawsuits in virtually every state in the country. Prominent Democratic lawyer Mark Elias alone has more than 40 cases in active litigation. These cases typically address a range of issues related to mail voting, witness requirements, the existence of drop boxes, and even who pays for stamps. But perhaps the most consequential issue at stake is the fight over the postmark, whether ballots will only be valid if they're received by Election Day, or whether they'll still be counted if they're postmarked by Election Day, but arrive days later. Earlier this month, as Postmaster General Louis DeJoy instituted cutbacks in USPS operations, which he later reversed, and Donald Trump bragged that he was resisting congressional funding efforts in order to throttle mail-in voting around the country. These moves substantially strengthened the hand of lawyers seeking to change the rules. Wendy Weiser, an election law expert at New York University's Brennan Center for Justice, told me that the Postal Service has essentially proved the case, by saying that the Postal Service does not believe it can provide service that will enable votes cast under the state's rules to be counted. I can't think of any kind of stronger factual showing that people are going to be unconstitutionally deprived of the right to vote. The issue of the postmark can be hugely consequential. In Wisconsin's April primary, about 79,000 ballots arrived after Election Day. Because Wisconsin is a receive by Election Day state, these votes were counted only due to the intervention of a federal judge. In Michigan's August primary, 6,400 ballots were postmarked by Election Day but were not counted because they weren't received in time. Jocelyn Benson, Michigan's Secretary of State, told me she expects those numbers to more than double in November. That's a relatively small percentage of the roughly 3 million anticipated votes in Michigan this fall, but a large enough number to potentially determine the outcome in a state carried by Trump in 2016 by only 10,704 votes, and where Republicans and Democrats are hotly contesting both Senate and House seats. It may seem like a small thing to ask voters to get their ballots in on time, especially as state election officials, both parties, and the media lavish so much attention on the topic. But the current state of confusion and uncertainty is not surprising. The vast majority of voters are expected to use mail balloting for the first time and may not fully appreciate the time required to request, receive, and return ballots, and the challenge is only aggravated by the welter of rules around the country on mail balloting. Some states require mail votes to arrive by Election Day, others count votes if they are postmarked by Election Day but arrive within 3 days after the election, and others give 7 days or even more. But perhaps most importantly, many voters and election officials are just beginning to grapple with the impact of the degradation of Postal Service standards in an era of budget cuts and coronavirus limitations. In extraordinary letters sent in July, Tom Marshall, the General Counsel and Executive Vice President of the United States Postal Service, wrote to the top election officials in 46 states advising them that they need to take into account the declining efficiency of mail delivery. Marshall, for instance, advised Benson that in Michigan, there is a significant risk that, at least in certain circumstances, ballots may be requested in a manner that is consistent with your election rules and returned promptly, and yet not be returned in time to be counted. In other words, voters could still be screwed even if they do everything right. Liberals, and many in the media, let out an uproar when Marshall's letters found the light of day, seeing them as more proof of the perfidy of the Trump administration. In truth, it was the opposite. Whether intentionally or not, a subject of some debate among election experts, Marshall, a career USPS lawyer, provided compelling evidence that restrictive mail counting rules could undermine constitutionally protected voting rights. Democratic lawyers have experienced mixed success thus far in persuading courts to change rules in the battle over the postmark, but Marshall's letter gave them new momentum. Shortly after receiving Marshall's letter, Pennsylvania officials, who had been previously defending state rules requiring mail ballots to be received by Election Day, asked the state Supreme Court to order an additional 3-day grace period. Democratic lawyers are still asking for 7 days, according to Elias. In Michigan, Benson has been walking a political tightrope, publicly arguing to change the arrive by Election Day rule, but also defending state law in a case brought by the Michigan League of Women Voters. Until now, that case had not been going well for the League, which lost in state appellate court and was denied review by the Michigan Supreme Court. But with the ongoing USPS controversies and Marshall's letter as evidence, the League returned to the Michigan Supreme Court seeking to reopen the case, and Benson, the defendant, told me that she hopes that the court will take it up, because Marshall's letter makes clear that Michigan's requirements are an infringement on our citizens' constitutional rights, and state constitutional rights, to vote, in particular. All this amounts to a significant shift on a critical issue. It's hard to know the ultimate impact of Marshall's letters and Trump's public rumination on intentionally throttling the post office. But it's possible that they will have a decisive impact on how the 2020 election is administered, and not in the way that the president necessarily wants. More great stories from Vanity Fair: how Jared Kushner's secret coronavirus testing plan went poof into thin air, why Trump's Black Lives Matter protest response could cost him 2020, behind the scenes of the NBA's dystopian COVID-free bubble, experts worry Trump's DHS crackdowns ignore the real threat, how Carlos Ghosn escaped to Japan, according to the ex-soldier who snuck him out. Former pandemic officials call Trump's coronavirus response a national disaster. From the archive, the untold story of Dallas's heroic Ebola response. Looking for more? Sign up for our daily Hive newsletter and never miss a story. Let's block ads. Why?
Show your love for him. Click the link in description. Thanks for watching.